Hello, I am Cheryl Peralt, and I'm here at HCAM TV this evening, but really in my own home, to have a conversation with my friend Helena Leet Pellegrini as part of the Common Ground storytelling series, as occasionally I am inviting guests to join in more of an intimate conversation and bit of interview to learn more from people involved in the field of storytelling, through storytelling. And that is why I have invited my friend Helena this evening to have a bit of a mentoring conversation together with her. So hello, Helena. It is good to see you.
Hello, Cheryl. Good to see you too.
In your own home as well.
And I'm at home as well. Yes.
Yeah. And so as I explained to you, we are here together to talk a little more in depth about storytelling and the importance of storytelling for people, for community, for civilization, as you see it today. And that's how I got to meet you, out in the field of storytellers, perhaps on stage, a common stage somewhere. I met you, or I have seen you at one of your past performances with others, and sometimes solo, right? You did one-woman shows also.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I began telling storytelling only about maybe 15 years ago. So it's kind of later in life that all this happened. I'm a psychologist, and about 15 years ago, I guess, I was, my daughter was living in the apartment next to us, and it was so exciting. They'd been living in Tennessee. Suddenly they were there, and I could do my grandmothering. And after they were there about a year, my son-in-law said that he'd gotten a job in DC. And it was like, oh my gosh. My first thought was, he's taking my girls away from me, because I had two granddaughters. But then when I got my senses back, I realized they weren't mine. And it was time for me to look at what's next. What's next for me? What do I want to do at this next stage of life? And I'd always been interested in creative expression. As I said, I was a psychologist, but at one point I had a bout with breast cancer, and that shifted my work to include not just maybe talk therapy from the neck up, but to include the body. So I got interested in how to express myself in other ways. And so
as part of psychotherapy?
Yes. So I did creative expression workshops to bring the whole body in, and stories were always a part of it, because I always just loved stories. Even when I was little, my mother always said, you always wanted me to tell you the family stories. And I did. I always wanted to learn. So I said, okay, maybe I'll give it a try now that my granddaughters won't be underfoot. Not underfoot, but under heart and arm. But so I found a storytelling venue. It was Outspoken Word at the time with Libby Frank. Yeah. And I went and I tried that 5-minute story that you do at first, and then at some point Libby said, I'd like you to do a feature. And I turned around to see who she was talking to. But I did say yes. And if someone asks me, it's like, why not? Why not? If I hadn't thought that maybe something opens up here. So I did. That was the first feature I did. And then Libby brought me to Cambridge and Brother Blue.
Brother Blue, right.
And I walked in, and there was this incredible man, all bedecked in blue, right, with butterflies and all. And when I saw him, I flashed back to a time that I was with Michaela. We went to the butterfly farm, and is it Westford, I think?
Right.
Yeah, and we were in that incredible enclosure, and It was magical, these beautiful butterflies fluttering all over the place. And at one point, one butterfly, it was a radiant blue butterfly, just landed right here on my shirt and didn't flutter, just stayed and stayed. And I was so taken with the moment that I asked a stranger if she would take a picture so that I would have something to remember this moment that so captured me, you know. And now all of a sudden here was this butterfly man, blue, you know, and where he and Ruth welcomed every story as a gift, you know, for our commonality, for our shared humanity, you know. And so Brother Blue believed that stories could change the world. And I love when he would say he tells stories from the middle of me to the middle of you. About a profound connection, you know, whatever the different story may be. It's that like, oh, what's happening here? And it's an imperfect connection. So that was it. I've been storytelling ever since, and encouraging others to story too, because I think I love what you're doing, community storytelling, because it is that sharing, that even though the stories are different, that commonality, that basic humanity that we share, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm struck by your backtracking the history of how you got involved in stories. And first of all, mentioning Libby Frank, who is the late Libby Frank, and we miss her and grieve her. It was only recently that she did pass away, and she really was a connector, a source of connection, and the open mic that she hosted and the different kinds of opportunities for people to share stories. So I want to express mutual gratitude to Libby. She had invited me to represent Women of the Roaring 20s, and I had a wonderful time getting to know her and David Ingle and the cast, and then also seeing that program of open mic, outspoken word in Framingham, and giving everybody an opportunity to go up there and give it a try. And that open mic is so important for people to get a feel for what it's like to share your story beyond yourself with others, right? And
you, Cheryl, what you've taken up that banner, you do so much for storytelling and opening opportunities for people and bringing us together, you know.
You know, I was fortunate to be in Hopkinton connected to HCAM, who opened up the studios for all of these things to happen. But I see the early roots of it for myself, as you're saying, for you to be in an open mic setting, to have a welcoming environment, to be yourself and share your own story, right? And then you say that you went from there into Cambridge with Brother Blue and Ruth Hill. And again, that importance of being welcomed. And as you said, no matter what you had to say, and I heard Ruth Hill say that also, in her partnership with him, you could say anything and Brother Blue would stand there and listen and help you see the beauty in yourself and want to do more.
Absolutely.
And so that's what got you going. And I'm just curious, what made you think storytelling though in the first place? Because back 15 years ago or so, that wasn't so familiar. There wasn't the moth, I think. It wasn't really popular then. So what made that exciting or connecting for you?
Well, I think because I always loved hearing stories and telling stories. It as a little girl, my mother's, as I said, my mother always said you wanted to hear the stories. And I remember I would go to a movie sometime and I would then tell the story of the movie. I would do the whole story. I would do the whole movie so that friends and family would say, please, we want to see it ourselves. So
You use your hands and your body a little?
of course, I'm Italian, and that has to be part of it, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I always just love stories. And then I think with the moth, something shifted. As you say, it wasn't people, if you said stories, it was like telling to children in the libraries. So adult storytelling really kind of rose, the popularity that rose with the moth, I think, and so
Yeah.
it's been going, I think, wildly since then. I feel it all around at this point,
Mm.
I'm now, excuse me, I'm now in a retirement community. And so we've begun a storytelling circle here too, so it's just to build relationship and, commonality, to see what we have in common with others, and then what we can learn from each other, because
Yeah.
that's powerful. I'm going to have to take a little.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, that's really the idea also behind common ground storytelling, is to help us in community near and far. We had one guest from Kenya last time, and that's something exciting that Zoom can provide. But to hear the differences of our individual experiences, but also see where our common ground is, as storytellers, and then in other ways, how we're all connected. It's really an important platform. And and backtracking a little bit, I also wonder how you see the role of stories in relation to being a psychotherapist. How stories of people are important for the work of healing.
Um, I read someone that said sometimes people need a story more than anything,
Yeah.
and it's um, it's at one level, I'm sorry, this is difficult.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm glad you have water, because that's one thing I can't do through Zoom.
You can,
Yeah.
if you can stay with this little hoarseness, I guess.
Yeah.
um, let's see, stories. Yes. Well, I think we just couple of things about, more than a couple of things about stories, but just to hear another story, and sometimes to recognize yourself in the story, that something's resonant, so that place that I'm not alone in the world, get to I can connect with that too. I know that too. So it's being seen and being known through stories.
Yeah.
And then in what you were talking about, knowing they're just all stories. There are a few, they've been told over and over again. They're just a few stories. I mean, and the universal themes are what? Love and loss, life and death, courage, survival, hope, the things that we pass on from generation to generation to kind of fashion, well, what kind of society, what kind of culture do we want to be, and to have, and to find those stories when the cultures are so different, that speak to that universality. It's like, it's just wonderful. It's like being able to embrace more and more of the world, acknowledging the differences, and celebrating the oneness.
Yeah.
There was Lily Tomlin had a line I loved. We're all in this together by ourselves.
Yeah.
And it captures that paradox, our uniqueness, which we can celebrate, and yet the oneness at the same time. To be able
Yeah. Well, that does say it well. And thank you for Lily Tomlin is a great also, isn't she? So, so we're talking about storytelling, and in community, observing our differences and our common ground also. Can you tell a little bit backwards what your experiences were as a storyteller, I know more recently you've ended up in church as a storyteller. And I know you've traveled different places in stages in sharing your true stories that are captivating and energizing. And you, I think, are a force. You're like a Powerball of beautiful energy, and you come really alive on stage so that people feel like they're in your shoes having that experience. And not only that, you become a teacher, a little bit, a human teacher. Not, you have us laughing at you at the little foibles and obstacles you run into, but also, getting up off our knees and wiping our brow and saying, isn't life amazing and interesting? And so what's your trajectory of the experience of being a storyteller extraordinaire, really, without even knowing it, I think?
Um, well, well, I don't know where to start.
From open mic at Brother Blue, and then you went beyond that.
True stories that I tell that seem to connect with people. And what I went to was, when you tell a true story that's from your own heart, that's meaningful to you, that it's almost as if maybe heart speaks to heart. There's something that can communicate. So I was remembering the first story I told, that I really went into something that was, heartful for me. And it was a story about my grandfather, who was an Italian immigrant and an anarchist. And there had been, and I had a dream. I used to have a recurring dream that with him that was just as, it was very disturbing, and then I forgot it as I grew up. And then later on in my life, I had that dream again. And after I had looked at it more deeply and went into what that story was, I told that story, what it was like to grow up with my grandfather, what it was like for my mother growing up with with her father, and all the what happened to the family out of that, what fears were instituted in people, and what we all still like, that almost that generational, you carry the generational fear from one generation to another. So I kind of told that story and was able to transform my relationship to the family fear, to see it in a different way that could forward me in my life, and just expand what the possibilities were for not always acting or behaving out of that fear, even when you might not even know it was ruling you in the way it was,
How interesting. I've heard about this in a, how would I say, a transformative healing way, like in psychology, like in medicine, that people are paying attention to intergenerational trauma and healing potential, and that we carry our previous generations, our ancestors' stories and their traumas and their grudges and their fears of other people, and we don't even know it. And that if we do what you were doing, and that's ahead of your time, because when you were doing it, because I'm just hearing about people starting to dig into this now, that it offers both you some healing as well as your family and future generations. And in a way, it kind of settles things from our past. What you did through story, I mean, you were doing amazing psychological medical work in a way. Right. And you didn't even know it, I bet.
Yeah, well, whatever, but Yeah,
But it started with a dream. How interesting.
with a dream. It's like, that's what I mean, like things that come to us repeatedly, or you don't know why, but there's always something to plumb there. But I think in terms of community storytelling or sharing, is like when we tell something from that we inhabit ourselves, that we can live from, that has meaning and heart for us, that's what gets communicated to. So it's like, oh, we all have stories to tell, you know? But
Mhm.
it's almost that energy that passes between people
Mhm.
when you're speaking from the heart, in one way of saying.
Yeah. Like people coming alive, maybe.
Yes, it's when you come alive, when you inhabit, when you live it. It's that aliveness, that energy
Mhm.
communicated.
Mhm.
And then I love what Maya Angelou said. She said, you may not remember what people said, but you'll remember how they made you feel. So
Mhm.
something like that's the idea. So it's like, that's that commonality again, that universal heart to heart connection, that we're all just yearning to grow and be inspired and inspire, and more freedom, more love,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Uh,
and so we can say it in different ways, different people in different
mm, mm,
families and different
yeah.
cultures will have a different story to tell, but it's like, oh, how are you alive in it, and how are you being with the story, so we can all not just stay in the trauma, or in the downside of it, or in the tragedy of it, but to what can we learn from that, so that we can move on to a new way
Yeah.
of with ourselves and with each other.
Yeah. 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 I've been thinking about this lately. One of the stories from my past, and maybe many others, was about um, my ancestors, and one of my great grandparents could not marry the man she loved because he was Catholic and she was Protestant.
Mhm.
And also, I think of my husband's family. The children who were Catholic and Protestant couldn't play together back in time. And you can see how this goes forward, and it keeps people with divided minds and fearful minds of one another for being different because of the stories they were told. And it keeps people sort of set in that kind of a mindset, right? That can be toxic for everybody. And what do you know? My husband and I end up getting married, a Protestant and a Catholic, and also all the other types of discrimination that we have seen from our previous generations. Reliving that in a different way and continuing on with this, our children now, and learning from them as well with their partners. So it is very interesting and important, I think, that you were doing this in storytelling. Can you tell a little bit about some of the stories that you have told in your experience? Maybe what some of the themes were, and what you saw bring people together?
Well, may I say, I wanted to comment something
Oh,
you
yeah.
were talking about, the stories that lived before, but stories shape shift. That's what happens. And we can keep changing that. And that's what happened. You and John changed the story that
Right.
living before. And so that we can keep creating a new story, to make lives be more fun.
Better. Yeah.
Right.
Better for our children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, right.
Absolutely. So
Mm.
then also some of the stories I've told, well, the first one was about my journey to find my creative expression, you know, and so that was my journey to find storytelling in the end, because I always had the impulse to create, but never found a way to really do it. And it locked in with storytelling. Then I tell the story about my grandfather. As a matter of fact, my daughter is editing. I'm going to be putting some of my stories into a book for the first time. I haven't done that.
Oh, that's exciting.
So it's kind of like a legacy. It's a way of like, so Maria said, yes, I want to do it. So we've been working on that with her. So we're putting some of them in a book that may be released soon. I don't know when, but.
How is that process for you to recount them yourself and to your daughter?
Well, it's wonderful to recount them. The difficult thing is to put it in writing because, as you know, I'm Italian. I move a lot. I've got a lot of. So when I tell a story, when I perform, my body's in it a lot. So it was kind of how do you put that on a page? How do I So that's been, but it's been incredibly wonderful to work with my daughter. And she's, oh, I never heard that one before. I never, so she's so we're putting them together, and then there was one. As a matter of fact, I think I maybe have done it even at HCAM. I think I did it about a fun women being outrageous, menopausal women being outrageous.
Give some examples.
Well, we're going for a cousin outing in Boston. We thought we'd go on a harbor cruise, but then we decided, 4 women who were planning this decided we would show up and surprise our male cousins by dressing up in prom dresses and wedding. So that.
And you were middle-aged?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I have a story about my relationship to laughter, and we've talked about that before. I had a father who was incredibly funny, and just humor and laughter just poured out of him. My mother was very serious. And the one thing I say about that is that one time I just laughing full out, just full out, and she said, don't laugh like that. Your mouth is open. You don't look good. So it's so it's like mother gave one message, father gave another. So it's my kind of. So I talk about my relationship to laughter, and then about there's a journey with my mother that I call From Worry to Wisdom. And I talk about her having been so fearful and worried about everything in her life. She lived to be 3 weeks short of 100 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And I got to spend like the last 15 years with her. Incredible gift where I found myself just writing down things she was saying. I never thought I would hear from my mother.
Wow.
And put that into this too. Into this book that I'm calling Living, Laughing, and Loving Out Loud.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a wonderful book project. And you bring in different generations with it as well. And why were you writing down your mother's words, and what did you learn from her or from that act? I used to do that with hospice patients, and I saw the great importance of that. So I'm curious why you just spontaneously did that in taking care of her at the end of her life.
She lived with Bob and me, with my husband, for about 5 years, and then she was at St. Patrick's nursing home for the last 9 years. But because I saw her evolution. I mean, I saw her. She said things I never would have believed. For her acceptance of death. Incredibly fearful. That was one thing, or just her attitude toward going to the nursing home, and her. I talked about in one story, I talked about the gifts we get from both parents. The upside and the downside. Kind of, shape shifting the story until you realize, oh my God, I can see that even in the downside, there was a gift. That's something I could use from what I might have been annoyed by earlier in life. You know, it's almost like, what is the gift? What is it that we can glean from our lives that doesn't pull us back or down, but keeps us keeping on, you know, and with much love and joy and laughter as possible, you know. And
Yeah, well, that sounds like a lot of wisdom that you have been discerning in your travels of story as well, that can be identified whether purposefully for audience or sometimes even just capturing a story that we might, speaking from my past observations, might not know we have in us until we tell the story or we write the story. I noticed that with hospice patients and people I interview, as well as myself, by leaning into a memory or a moment or a story, and getting the recounting the memories down, and then look with new perspective of it, and seeing that we all do possess this deeper wisdom than when we make time to notice it, right?
absolutely, it's there, but we've forgotten, or or just needs to be stoked or brought out. And if you hear it in someone else, it has to be here as well. You know, it's like, I believe we all have that kernel. You know, it's there to be
Yeah.
remembered or plumbed, or paid attention to. Paid attention to. We're so busy,
Yeah.
we don't
Uh,
pay it.
right. Yeah. So, what's so big a deal about stories? I know I used to think that way when I was doing stand-up comedy first, and then going to poetry, and it's like, storytelling, isn't that for children? And then I get it. And
And
then I start to listen to people, and I see how important stories are for our existence, that we're telling stories all the time, whether we know it or not, right?
exactly. And there's so much evidence now that we're really hardwired for stories. You know, our brains are there for them. They're generating them all the time. They're, they're who we are. I story, therefore I am, you know.
Yeah. What is a favorite little anecdote or moment of your time with your mother at the end of her life, that you can remember, that guides you now, maybe?
Um, well, the very end, it was, she declined slowly until she was 90. Her memory was fantastic. But then over the last 10 years, and it got to the point where it was difficult to understand her, and sometimes the words were unintelligible, but then she'd come out with just a gem, like in the wheelchair. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. I'm in this wheelchair, but wherever I go, I know I'll be happy. It's
Mm,
live and die. It's live and love. The loving never dies.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, and this is, the words came out so clearly after, not being able to understand her for a bit. Then sometimes something,
Where'd that come from, right?
and then right, and then she noticed my tears, said something like, um, "That's the joy dripping out of you because of love."
Woof. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And you have, fortunately, you were able to be present and be around her, even though a lot of times she did not make sense, perhaps you could not decipher, yet you were there to capture that wisdom from her, those last messages.
Right.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that is very precious. And it shows also the importance of being there for one another to listen, and even through the hard times and struggles, right?
And always the laughing and the crying. Do you know what I mean? There's always, there are moments of just all of it. It was an incredible gift.
Yeah, yeah, for both of you, how special that you could do that for her, to take care of her at the end. And I know that you also have been a mother and a grandmother. And I wondered, do you have any recollection of one little anecdote that you hold with you from the mothering part of you, as well as the mothered?
Right. Just so many.
Because you have 3 children.
And 5 grandchildren.
5 grandchildren. Wow. Oh, yeah.
Well, they're just incredible moments, sort of out of time and space. It's just sometimes when I think there'd just be something between me and my children, one, and you just kind of might be in the middle of an argument, and then I remember with one of my sons, we were in this big argument and we both walked away, and it was like that. And then we just turned and looked at each other.
Uh-huh.
And it was just.
That's it.
It was just like, it felt, very profound, like that's all there is. That's
yeah.
Some truth that overrode everything.
Yeah.
Place is always available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And too caught up in,
Yeah. And to be, not get caught up in that moment in I'm right and you're wrong and all that, but to both of you notice it, be present. And then and also that's a story.
Right.
And beyond too.
And knowing that we're going to fall into that right, wrong, why didn't you, we're going to do that again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Have something.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really ever forget.
Yeah. Now you can bottle that up, and we could all have it, take it in our home, so we can all look at each other like this. Right. In the world, right? Because everybody thinks they're right and everybody else is wrong. That's what we have been seeming to feel like we're in a world of currently.
And if we dare to fall into our true humanity, what's possible?
Yeah. Like turning around and seeing each other as a mirror, right? I remember another storyteller friend, and I remember author Toni Morrison saying pretty much the same thing. You look into a mirror, and when you look at your reflection, you see the world. Imagine all these faces of the whole world looking back at you.
Yeah.
And feeling that deep connection as if it's yourself. Exactly. And that's what your story reminds me of there, which is a very powerful little tiny anecdote. I put you on the spot for asking, and you got it. So it's about paying attention, right? And
this is also what I love about stories. My story generates your story, and it's the same story. But isn't it wonderful to hear how you say it, how someone else says it, how I say it?
That's right. Yeah. So you were doing some of this at HCAM Studios, right? You had started a program there. You did, and you've experimented in different places and tried out different kinds of programs. Can you tell about some of the ways you have gotten people not to be performers, but to share their stories to help them in different ways as community?
Right. And I think that's what I'm doing here at Southgate too now.
Yes. Are you the facilitator there?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, they're lucky to have you.
I created a storytelling circle, and I introduced them to adult storytelling, just the way we talk about it, and about the power of story to connect, to learn from each other, to be inspired, to grow, so, and to have fun. We definitely have to have fun. So I was, when I came here, there's amazing people with incredible lives. We'd have dinner sitting at a table, and I'd hear these wonderful stories, and I'd be listening. Oh, there's a story over there at that table. I want to hear that. So it was set up almost as if you only got to hear stories when you were with certain people at a certain table for dinner. So I said, well, why don't we do a circle where everybody can hear the story? So it got to be quite popular. Of course, the pandemic put a kibosh on that, but we're going to start that up again. But then the other important thing was to talk about the relationship between, there is no story without the listener. You know what I mean? You need, that's what brings it alive, because you create your story of my story. So the listener is, there's another phrase I liked. What was it? The teller sows, the listener reaps. So it's like, and I love even what we did. Like I said something that would generate something in you, that's so there's so many stories, and people just, well, I think I got off the track. I forgot what you asked specifically.
Oh, well.
No,
I probably did too. Because we have been traveling around different places, but we were talking about your experience at Southgate.
Right. But that's life off track, right?
Yes, and I am impressed, and I how fortunate for the people over there that you got this going over there. How would you recommend people could do this on their own wherever they are? You transitioned over to your assisted living setting where you live.
You're doing it in Hopkinton now. You're doing it.
Yeah.
You're doing it in a way that didn't have to account for the pandemic. You've done
right.
it.
Yeah.
So it's happening. I think it's happening, and I think it's that desire to recreate the campfire. That circle where people just share stories. And it's been going on since the beginning of man. There hasn't been a society that didn't tell stories. They may not have had the wheel, but stories were told. So I think anywhere and everywhere, and just knowing that we can really learn. I love to hear other people's stories, and how your experiences kind of gets to be part of me in a way too. I can kind of expand my repertoire of all the things that I know. Oh, that too, so I take you into me too.
Right.
We kind of keep growing together.
Yeah. And I have found in the different programs that I've been hosting involving listening and learning from each other's stories, different kinds of focus points, like round tables, storytelling, open mics. They have different formats, but it's the same idea. But I think what I've found so helpful in all of those settings is addressing judgment and saying that we let go of judgment outside the door in this setting. We're so inclined, we're so socialized and taught from early age to be thinking with a judging mind, judging ourselves, criticizing ourselves, not letting ourselves explore, like put our arms up like this, right? Even that, sometimes I've asked people in an audience, and that's like too risky or scary. And I used to feel like that too, or dance, Lord forbid. But we criticize ourselves so much, we shut ourselves down, and then we do it to one another. And it really limits our ability to feel alive, our judgment. And so, you know, and I come from psychology field just like you, and judgment is used in a different way and analyzing, and it's to help people to understand with an analytical mind, but at the same time, between my religion growing up and being a scientist and looking at different ways of judging to help people, which I understand and appreciate. When I became involved in the creative arts, I see how it can be very liberating and connecting for us to say, okay, for this program of storytelling, judgment is out the door, and we're going to listen to each other with open eyes and open ears and open heart, right?
Yeah, the thing about judging is that you want to help, but there's an assumption that I know and you don't. There's an assumption that I have something that you don't. And that energetically can create a kind of barrier to really being open or heartfulness, you know? So it's like, that's why teaching when the heart is connected to it, you know, and I feel stories do that, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what you said earlier about, well, you said something like, well, we're always telling stories, even if we don't know it. I mean, even in a small exchange, there's a story that happens, which reminds me of another little granddaughter anecdote. She's a linguist. And she loves language. And when she was 5 years old, she wanted to create a new language, and she called it garlic. And it was you could only use one syllable words to communicate.
Wow.
But one time, so I always, even when she was little, I always looked to her for things about language. And one day we said, well, let's tell stories. So when it was her turn, this was her story. Once upon a time, the end. And I howled. It was just, there was something. Yes, we're once upon a time animals, you know, and it was just like she invoked something once upon like there was such a possibility in that. I thought,
Yeah.
that's what I remember.
Oh, well, that sounds like a very deep thinking child in a way. And right, children can have a lot of instant wisdom in them. And an adult might say, oh, well, that's, you know, where's the story in between? But
well, it depends on the story that I made of her story.
right. Yeah.
I saw it in the light of what can inspire me here? What can make this be something that I expand out of? Rather, oh my God, she doesn't even know how to tell a story. She forgot the middle, you know?
Right. Yes.
You know? So
Yeah.
what are we committed to as we listen to each other, you know?
Right. Yeah. So then it's the melding of who we are, our experience with the person telling the story to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Not to destroy it.
In that demeaning kind of way. Or
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions. We only have about 15 minutes. Oh, we have 10 minutes. I see. So what do you have a few tips for people who aren't being performers necessarily, but tips for sharing stories effectively, as you are both a natural storyteller and you are a performing storyteller, even doing monologues by yourself?
Well, telling stories effectively, it's like, it depends on what people want or where they are. I mean, for some people, it's just like, oh, I can't tell a story. I could never get up there. So it might be just, you know, beginning to say, here I am, or say, once upon a time, the end, or instead of having it to be a certain form of what's an effective story. Now, if you want to be a performer, if you want to be, fine. And there are wonderful books and courses to learn to tell a more effective story. And some people may just, want to share, but it's more like sharing from the heart. So what I say to people here who think, well, I don't have a story. Well, of course you do. You someone said you can't survive childhood, and if you survive childhood, you have enough stories to last for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So we're all full of stories all the time, and it's just like, let me hear you, or let me see you, or give me you for the minute, or for the one line you want to say, because it's that kind of, here I am, here you are, we're together, that kind of energy. So I don't like to, for someone who just wants to start telling, just make it be constricted in some way. Because there's certain people who are natural storytellers, and they'll get up and it'd be so easy just to share. And so I think that the setting a time limit sometime, if you're with a group, or you fashion the guidelines depending on the group, and keep them where they are. What's the next thing that would make them fall in love more with telling and stories and sharing stories, and really falling in love with just falling with everyone. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. And I know it's always a treat to see you in action, and these days people can see you at where you live, in your facility, and you're also at the Unitarian Church, sometimes involved in programs in Grafton.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we stay tuned for your book also.
And stay tuned to all you're doing.
That's right, because you will be in the next program with the lineup for the program addressing the theme of laughter, the importance of laughter in our life. So I'm looking forward to having you be part of that lineup then, when you tell your own human story, just straight from who you are. And I know about you that you have seen a lot of life, right, in your years. And I don't remember what your age is, but
I have to think. 19.
You don't have to tell.
No, I do.
84. Oh my goodness. I was going to go for much younger than that, because you feel like you are younger than me, who just turned 60. And that's how I always feel when I get together with you, because you have so much vibrant, beautiful energy in you about life. And I know you've had a lot of joys, and you've had a lot of challenges and sorrows, which is like most of us if we get to have a full, long life, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So do you have, in all the experience you've had and the ability to get in touch with your wisdom through stories, which is a gift that everybody can get. I find that through doing writing with people, and I say, no matter the setting, people dealing with Alzheimer's, people dealing with addiction, people in a nursing home, retired nuns, all these people I work with, and I say, okay, write about a moment, write about your name. And if they can't write, tell me from your words. Hospice patients I would do this with, that we all do have some deeper wisdom.
Absolutely.
In us. So I've found that with everybody. And I wonder if you have any last words in the last 5 minutes we have about helping people to find out what you've noticed, or how you see stories as connecting us all to see the wisdom of one another. whatever you want to say.
You've said it beautifully. You say it beautifully, Cheryl. So, and it's just to reiterate, that we do all have the wisdom in us. We are gifts to each other. We can learn from each other, and grow from each other. Yeah. Your stories bring awarenesses to me that I didn't have, that now I can include, for me. Yeah, just keep storying, keep writing, keep sharing,
Keep listening too, right?
Yeah, critical. There is no story without the listener. That's what, so.
Right, for us all to listen to one another,
Right.
and we learn as we go.
Yeah, listen to that place where we suspend judgment. Listen
Right.
to the place where we're standing in the, just kind of, who is this wonderful creature, who dares to share with me something that maybe is from the heart, So yeah, so to listen in that openness.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you're speaking of the heart, you speak about the heart a lot. I think we have maybe 2 more minutes, but I think of a quick little story my friend said about how she saw her mother in the hospital having her heart examined on, I don't know what it was, ultrasound or CAT scan. And she said, looking at that heart of her mother made her feel deep compassion for her mother, for the whole of her, the inside of her, for her heart, working so hard to keep her alive with her health struggles. And then for her own heart as well, that the heart beats and cares for, we feel emotion in a way, our heart goes fast, right? When we see someone we love or we feel stressed, but it also keeps us alive and going. And so it just gave her pause in that moment. And her telling me that story made it come alive for me. I take care of my heart, my whole body, and realize that we all have parts in common and so much more.
And here I am doing this because of the story you just told. So now I have that.
Yes. That's so now my friend Elaine's story goes on out into the world and it is about the great big heart of us all that we all have. And so we have 2 minutes. Anything else that you want to say from your heart or your mind? Helena, you've been wonderful mentoring in your talking.
Let's just keep gifting each other.
All right.
We are.
All right. Well, I look forward to that. I look forward to hearing what you're up to next and to having you come into HCAM for Common Ground Studios coming soon to share your story about laughter as well. So thank you so much.
Thank HCAM. Thank you.
We thank you, HCAM TV, and we look forward to your book, Helena. So, gee, how will we find out about that?
Well, Amazon at some point.
All right. Here we go then. We'll look forward to looking on Amazon and enjoy the process of making the book of your life and others' lives connected to you too.
Thank you, Cheryl.
With your daughter. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Take care. Thank you again.